Hello everyone and welcome to this webinar. I'm Francis Seeley from GlobalNet 21 and Enfield Voices, and this is one of the many webinars and many interviews that we do. And today we're going to look at the issue of housing, and we're going to talk to Matt Burns, who is from Better Homes, and we're going to interview him about what that means, and we're going to talk through a whole number of issues. Better Homes, as you can see, it's got its own logo, it's got its own Facebook page, it's an active organization with a lot of research behind it, and it's just presented or just made and published a report, and we'll talk about that very soon. Anyhow, Matt, you're with us today and we can see you now. So thank you for joining us. It's really great that you're here. Can I first ask you to tell us a little about yourself and why you have an interest in Better Homes?
Sure. Hello, thank you for asking me on today. So I'm Matt Burns. I'm from Better Homes Enfield. I'm one of the people who helps put together the research reports and blogs for Better Homes. And I've lived in Enfield, various different parts of Enfield, for about 30 years now. Very, very fond of Enfield. I like it very much. Children all went to school here. I love being in Enfield, and really just been very concerned about housing in Enfield now for a number of years, hence my involvement with Better Homes Enfield.
So you are from Better Homes. Now, you know, all of us want better homes. It's a sort of term that can mean nothing or everything. What do you mean by the term Better Homes?
Well, I guess in a sense, yeah, what we really want to see is homes where people can live happy, healthy, and fulfilled lives. And that all sounds very grand, but that is our ambition, to contribute towards that and to do our little bit towards trying to make that happen. And that can manifest itself in all kinds of ways. And as you'll see from our reports, one of the things we're campaigning on a lot at the moment is the need for homes that are large enough for the people who live in them. That would be a very good start to creating homes which are happy and healthy and enable people to live fulfilled lives. So grand aims, and we're just sort of trying to do our little bit to make that happen, really.
Okay, so you're based in Enfield. Do you think Enfield has better homes, or is there something wrong with the Enfield approach to housing?
Well, I think there's a lot of great homes in Enfield, and I think there's been some great new homes built in Enfield, particularly some of the homes by Peter Barber, the architect on Ordnance Road, for example. But recently we've become very concerned that we're not starting to see enough of the homes which Enfield needs coming through. So quite simply, the homes which Enfield needs are, well, we need a lot more homes. That's the first thing. And we're simply not getting them through at the moment, and they're simply not being built. We're not managing to meet targets, and that has some real impacts on where people live. There's simply not enough homes, and that's why we have very high temporary accommodation rates, are one of the reasons. There's also not enough homes for families. We know that Enfield needs a lot more homes for families. By homes for families, what we mean is homes with 3 or more bedrooms. We desperately need those, and they simply don't seem to be coming through. We seem to be approving a huge amount of small studio and 1-bedroom flats, and then not enough genuinely affordable homes. And affordable homes, as loads of people will know, is a very misused term. When we say genuinely affordable, we're talking about things like London affordable rent. We're specifically not talking about things like shared ownership. So yeah, I think there's some great homes in Enfield, but I think we could be doing better.
I mean, you talked about the term affordable homes, and councils, not just Enfield, they throw those terms around all the time, and they think that makes them sound good. They think it makes it sound like they've got homes that those who lived in deprived areas can have. But they are not affordable, are they, to large sections of the population? And really, it's a term that maybe we shouldn't use, because it's like selling something that's not there.
Yeah, I mean, there's 100% agree. There's a really big problems with the term affordable, and what I would really like to see, or what we would really like to see, is a lot more clarity in, for example, officer reports that go in front of the planning committee when it comes to talking about affordable homes. So what I mean by a lot more clarity is really specifically spelling out what the proportion of each type of affordable home that is being delivered. So is it a London affordable rent home, or a shared ownership home, or a London living rent home? There's lots of different types of affordable homes. So really specifying actually what types of affordable homes we're talking about. So being specific is important, and then showing that against what the target is for those types of homes. And then finally showing for each of those so-called affordable homes, what proportion of the target market in Enfield could actually afford to live in them. And I think that kind of clarity around affordable homes in planning committee meetings would be really, really helpful for the planning committee in terms of deciding whether to approve an application or not. Currently, what it seems to be is it seems quite muddled sometimes and quite vague about what is, what the affordable homes actually are and how they may or may not be affordable for local people.
So are you saying that in Enfield, we don't have that categorization, those different targets, which would make planning easier? It would also make it understandable more for the general public. And if you don't have those targets, by saying, we have affordable homes, you may be selling a pig in a poke.
Well, I mean, Enfield does have specific affordable housing targets for specific types of affordable housing. It just doesn't seem to deliver on them, and I guess there's all kinds of challenges with that. But I think the important thing is the people who are making the decisions, in this instance often the planning committee for major applications, it's important that they're really well informed and that they understand exactly what types of affordable homes the application is talking about.
I mean, you say it's challenging for them, but it's challenging for all local authorities, not just Enfield. So are you concerned that Enfield, for example, has not met its housing targets and is the second worst performing outer London borough in terms of increased housing stock?
The short answer is yes. That is concerning, because it's not the first time that's happened. I think it might be the third year in a row that's happened. And of course, that means that we're not getting enough of any types of homes coming through, really, let alone the types of homes we need, affordable homes and family homes. What also concerns us about that is the response it may be having. So to give you an example of what I mean, this year alone in the planning committee on major applications, we've seen more than 5,000 units being approved. That sounds good. I mean, we've got an annual target of around 1,200 homes that we need to build. So, saying yes to 5,000 of them, should put you in a good place. Our concern is the types of homes that are being approved, and the pressure of having not met targets and now needing to really, really urgently start meeting those targets is not the best foundation for good decision making. It creates a certain kind of pressure.
Okay, well, let's look at one particular area, and that's Meridian Water. And I know that you've just done or published a report on that, which is called Less is More, and it really is just hot off the press, that. I gather you feel that, in a way, this development is a lost opportunity for families in Edmonton. Why is that?
The report we released this week is the first of 3 reports that we're going to do, or at least 3 we're going to do on Meridian Water. So as you all know, a lot of people know Meridian Water is the site down in Upper Edmonton near IKEA, where the council is proposing to build 10,000 homes on the 85-hectare brownfield site there. It's mainly public land. It's a council-led development. So it really is a fantastic opportunity to deliver homes which Enfield really needs. You know, we're not seeing enough of the homes which Enfield needs coming through private developments. So in particular, what this report looks at is the homes for families, and they're really desperately needed in Edmonton. There's very high rates of overcrowded households in Edmonton. That is linked to all kinds of health problems and social disadvantages, which is really important that we take this opportunity to challenge. So we looked through a lot of the background reports from Meridian Water, and including the recent scrutiny committee report, which is really helpful. And we felt that an opportunity may be being missed. And the opportunity we felt that was being missed was to actually reduce the target, the overall target, from 10,000 to 8,000. But by reducing that overall target down, it gives a lot more room to build a lot more family homes within that 8,000. And in fact, we felt you could actually build an additional 2,200 family-sized homes if you took that sort of less is more approach. And we think that would be hugely beneficial for local people.
You say there's overcrowding in Edmonton, and I gather Edmonton's overcrowding is 5 times the national average. So, you know, you say that they need homes that people locally can relate to, which are family homes. Have you talked to the local authority about that? And if you have, what response have you got?
We've talked to a number of councillors about that, and the response is open, I would say. I think that councillors, a lot of councillors recognise the problem, and they really want to try and solve it. I wonder whether the figure 10,000 is going to be hard to step back from, because it does sound rather nice. 10,000 homes, it sounds like so much more than 8,000. But yeah, we have spoken to people. We hope that some of the councillors will help us to take this forward, and we're going to be talking to other people as well in the GLA and so on. So yeah, we've talked to people, and it seems positive.
So it's the beginning of a campaign for you to try and change that. Is it still time to change it, or is it too late?
Well, it better not be too late. I mean, you know, if it's too late for Meridian Water, then when are these family homes ever going to be built? I mean, for Meridian Water in the first stages, we're looking at quite a few years now until any serious number of the homes are going to be built. So if they're not going to be built at Meridian Water, then where on earth are they going to be built in the volumes that are needed and in the time span we need them? We need them urgently. Meridian Water can, I believe, still respond to that urgent need. They still have planning applications, the detail of the planning applications outstanding for phase 2 and even for Meridian 1. So there's still time for the councillors to step in and make an impact here.
But of course, they're building elsewhere, aren't they? For example, the Chase Farm Hospital site, and that's sort of been heralded as a new urban charter for that area. I mean, do you believe that that will help, or do we still have the same problem of not enough affordable homes and not enough family homes there, though they may be built there for a specific purpose?
We think that things can still change at Chase Farm. When we listened to the planning committee meeting, it seemed to us that the developer had said that the reason why they had so few family homes is because they'd been asked to keep the overall number of units figure high, and there actually would be scope still to increase the number of family homes, albeit if you reduce the overall target down. Less is more, again. So hopefully, as the detail comes through on Chase Farm, we'll actually see that remedied. We'll see a better mix of family homes coming through. I think one of the frustrations for us about Chase Farm is that it's pretty high densities in terms of the housing that they're proposing there. But it doesn't seem to have the amenities that you need to support such high density housing. So I'm thinking about things like, you know, shops and cafes and so on. So if you don't have those shops and cafes there, then that means people need to get to shops and cafes, and that seems to me to lead to an increase in potentially car usage. It doesn't seem particularly sustainable. And another frustration we had is that that site used to have a lot of homes for key workers on it, and actually the previous application for Chase Farm had a lot of homes for key workers on it, but these all seem to have disappeared in the latest application. Now, if you have homes for key workers, hospital workers next to the hospital, well, you can't. It's fantastic for sustainability. It's great, apart from the great gains in affordability.
Okay, so I mean, you're making representations to the council about Chase Farm Hospital site, and you have the idea, you know, it must be integrated with services and so on to make it sustainable, and that's what you hope you'll do. But you're also concerned with other things in Enfield, aren't you? One of the things you're concerned about is office conversions into flats. Why are you concerned about that?
Well, now you're talking. Office conversions. Office conversions really are really the thing that probably triggered sort of Better Homes going from a sort of, you know, becoming more of a semi-formal thing, I suppose. So office conversions in Enfield. So what happens when offices get converted is one of the ways they can be converted into flats is by something called permitted development. And there's been a lot in the press about permitted development. What this really means is that developers are able to convert offices into flats without going through the normal planning processes. Unfortunately, what that means is in a number of cases is that you get some really awful flats being built, very small, cramped, noisy, poor ventilation, really substandard homes. The other problem is that often the people who end up living in those office conversions are quite vulnerable. You get families living in maybe a studio flat or one-bedroom flat, sharing sleeping spaces, sitting on the bed while they have their dinner. So these things are really unacceptable. And we thought, initially we thought they can't be stopped. It's a government thing, permitted development. But actually it turns out they can be stopped at a local level. And for a long while we campaigned for something called an Article 4 direction, which Enfield Council could put in place, or could have put in place, to stop office conversions in Enfield. Just to give you an idea of the size, there's about 400 flats at the moment, which have been converted from offices, and there's another 500 in the pipeline. And just one other thing, if I can, just to clear up, a lot of the offices are actually, they're not vacant, unused offices. These are offices where people are actually working, and then they have to leave because they're going to be converted into flats. Now, that's not great for our town centre's economy. You need kind of office workers for employment, and you also need them to spend money in your local town centres. So losing very, very large amounts of office space to flats is not great for our towns.
Well, you know, if you can't do something about it through implementing what you call Article 4, has Enfield done that? Do they know about Article 4 and have they applied it?
Yeah, they do know about it, and no, they haven't applied it. Other councils have.
Why do you think they haven't applied it?
I honestly wish I knew. I know why they haven't now, because there's been recent changes to planning legislations and to permitted development, which are going to, which actually make the need for an Article 4 less urgent, because we've now recently seen that they are now going to have to meet minimum space standards. There's now going to be light standards and so on. So things are perhaps not quite as urgent as they were, and also various changes coming through to the legislation make it very. They argue, the council argues, means they can't put an Article 4 in place at the moment. I don't completely agree with that, but so I know why they haven't now. I don't really know why they didn't several years ago when they could have done.
So you hope they will in the future. I mean, is it your view that planners, whether they're outside the local authority or inside the local authority, should be more aware than they are of well-being and sustainability issues?
No, I think they're probably pretty well informed about those things, to be honest. But what they do about it is another thing. I don't think planners are necessarily uninformed about those things. It's just how they decide to respond to them.
If they know about it and they don't respond, what do you think are the barriers there that stop them responding?
In terms, for example, of the number of family homes, I would guess that the pressure to meet housing targets would probably play a factor in that, particularly if you've had years of not meeting your housing targets. I assume that the pressure to get a number of units, a paper target through, becomes even greater. So I suspect there's an element of that going on. I think that might be part of why an Article 4 wasn't put in place. I really don't know. I mean, that's just a theory.
Well, I mean, governments and local authorities, not just Enfield, but all over, very often try to meet targets, and often their standards drop. Is it important then, if that happens in government generally, that groups like yours and others are very watchful of that and bring it to the attention of people?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's exactly what we're trying to do, really. We want to just use evidence-based research to raise awareness of some of the issues and to try and inform the general public about planning and about what's going on in their borough and how things could be better, and also to help inform councillors if we can, to give them another view of the evidence that's available, because really they can make the change. They're the ones who can make this happen.
I mean, you talk about local authorities, others trying to reach paper targets rather than fulfill housing need. Do you think that is responsible for the pressure for creating what people call hyperdensity development, high-rise flats, for example, the ones that were proposed in the Southgate area?
I think that, I mean, densities are complicated because the high density can be very good. High density means that you can have enough people to have really good amenities. That means you can have really good transport. That means you can afford to support all kinds of cafes and shops and cinemas and so on and so forth. So there is an element of density which is helpful. Where I think hyperdensity and high densities break down is if you have hyperdensities in places that don't and are unlikely to have the types of amenities that are needed to support hyperdensities. And the other problem that's crept in is that it seems to have been kind of confused with tower blocks. And high density housing doesn't have to mean 29-story tower blocks. Not at all. You can create high density housing in all kinds of other ways, and they do that a lot. Happens a lot across Europe and places in Europe. It doesn't have to be synonymous with huge tower blocks.
So why do local authorities, if they have that alternative you've just mentioned, like Enfield, go for high-rise buildings in the way that they have been trying to do?
Oh, I wish I knew the answer to that one. I think there are more creative possibilities out there. I think the Coliseum Park site is a site that was right for being developed, but I don't think it can support the types of housing that's been agreed to go on there. It's my personal opinion. I don't think a 29 tower block is necessary. As I said previously, what we've seen this year alone is 5,000, in fact, way over 5,000 now units have already been agreed. We only need to build 1,200 a year. So this kind of reaction, knee-jerk perhaps, because of the not reaching targets now. Years. Maybe that's what's going on there.
I mean, you talk about sustainable housing and you talk about that in terms of having all the services around housing, and that is one way of looking at sustainability, but we're moving into a period of climate change. And do you think that we're doing enough in Enfield to develop low carbon emissions and building around standards like the Passivus standard?
Hopefully there's going to be much more of that coming through at the moment. I've certainly seen a lot of talk about those kinds of standards. The one thing that stands out for me about building housing and reducing the impact on the environment and the climate is that you have to build the right type of housing. And by which I mean, if you just, broken record, but if you don't build the housing we actually need in these developments, then you're just going to have to build it elsewhere. You're just going to have to build more housing, and housing. Building housing is not necessarily particularly environmentally friendly. So to build a long load of blocks of flats we don't really need doesn't seem like the most environmentally sustainable approach to me.
And of course, you might build housing in floodplains thinking that flooding isn't coming, and or extreme weather conditions aren't coming. Do you think Enfield has an adequate climate change strategy around housing? I mean, they've got a climate change strategy, but do you think in terms of the climate change future, they have thought through this in terms of housing?
Well, whether they thought it through or not, the message doesn't seem to have actually gone through to what we're agreeing to build. They might have a strategy, but that doesn't seem to be manifesting itself in the types of homes which we're agreeing to be built. As I say, it comes back to building the right type of homes, the homes Enfield needs. You don't want to build a ton of stuff which we don't need. It's actually, in some regards, very simple. Don't build stuff you don't need. Build the stuff you do need. It's much more environmentally friendly. They have a strategy, but whether it's joined up with their planning strategy, I'm not sure.
Okay, I mean that's a good point, and I think maybe others should raise that with Enfield, that there is integration between the departments and their different sort of plans. I mean, you raised a lot of questions. You said there's an awareness in local authorities of many of these problems, but there seems to be a gap between awareness and right action. What can we do? What can people do out there like yourselves to help local authorities move from concern to action?
It's got to be about the quickest route has to be about contacting your local councillors, contacting people on the planning committee, contacting planning officers directly, the head of planning, the director in charge of place. Contact them, write to them, tell them about your concerns, and there's a much greater chance that they will listen if they know that Enfield is watching what's going on, and that people are worried about it. Hopefully they will do the right thing then and respond. But we really do need our councillors, and particularly those councillors on the planning committee, to really stand up now and stop, and lots of them are, but not all, and stop approving so many homes which Enfield simply doesn't need, and start approving the homes which Enfield does need.
We've sort of come close to the end of this interview now. And it's been really interesting because you talked about a lot of issues and a lot of deficits as well as the positives. Now, if anybody wanted to get involved in what you're doing, find out more about you, what would they do? Where would they go?
Sure, you can go to definitely to our website. There's some articles and reports there to read. We've got quite a lot more reports lined up, which just hopefully keep people informed about what's going on in Enfield. We try and keep things fairly short. I think the Meridian Water report had a read time of 10 minutes. So we try and keep it hopefully manageable to people. And it'd be great to hear from people. It's great that we get emails from all kinds of people. We're getting more emails from journalists over the last few months as well, which has been really interesting talking to them. So get in touch with us via our website. The email address is there, and we'll be happy to discuss housing in Enfield with you, or to help if we can, if you've got a particular concern. Okay, well, you've just seen the Facebook page. You can follow
Better Homes Enfield on there. And as Matt says, please, contact him if you feel that you want to be involved or you want to know more about what they're doing. Anyhow, thank you, Matt. That's an interesting interview because you've raised a lot of interesting points of what housing could be. You've talked about the fact that there is a lot of awareness, and you've talked about the difference between awareness and right action. And hopefully, with your help, with what you're doing, we can turn that awareness into right action. So, thank you for doing it. And I think it's a great contribution to Enfield into getting the type of homes that people need. So thanks a lot, Matt. And we'll end this interview now.